Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by RacerX, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by RacerX, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by RacerX.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. I appreciate you guys joining us each and every week. Hey, if you listen to us on iTunes, I appreciate that. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. It's always kind of cool just to put a face to the name and to the voice of some of our guests. RacerX obviously appreciates you guys tuning in on both platforms. Before we dive in, I want to tell you about the latest promotion that RacerX has. You can always find the latest promotion regardless of when you listen to this episode. Go to racerxonline.com/Moto Marketing. As of the time of this recording, they got some pretty cool things going on. You can subscribe or renew, and you get 3 bonus gifts, an exclusive 2022 RacerX calendar, $25 Rocky Mountain ATV MC gift card, and you also get a gift subscription for a friend, 12 of the digital issues, and obviously you get 12 digital issues and 12 print issues for yourself. So super cool, and obviously, supporting the magazine allows us to be able to do cool things like this show. I've got a guest that I've wanted to have on for some time. Charles Casella made the introduction for me. We chatted for a few minutes before this show, but I've never had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with our guest today. And he's somebody that I've admired for many years as someone that wants to get into the sport, finally getting into the sport, finally building my business. I look to names like Davey Coombs and Don Imler Jr. and our guest today, Dave Casella, who's the global marketing director of Troy Lee Designs. He's got one of the cool jobs in the sport that everybody that isn't in the sport, that wants to work in the sport, aspire to be someone like Dave one day. And I just wanted to have him on and organically kind of learn about him, because I know who he is, but like I told him, I don't know a ton about him other than he's just done some really cool things in the sport. Clearly, you don't work at TLD without being really good at what you do. So, Dave, man, I really appreciate you joining us. I'm excited to dive in with you and learn a little bit about your backstory and what you're doing today and what got you there. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Luke. I'm stoked to be here and appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. So I found out that you're an East Coast guy.
Yep.
So how did we get into, did you always love the sport of moto? How did we get into just following this sport that obviously one day led you down the road of working in it?
Yeah. Like you said, I was born on the East Coast, right outside of Boston, and kind of moved through New England. And as we kind of moved out towards the suburbs, I really took to BMX racing and riding moto, and I just loved it, man. And there wasn't many of us that were doing it back in my area at that time. And I just really, I don't know. I wasn't very scholastic. I did fine in school, but just wasn't really my thing. And I was really into design and art and writing. Those were that was my jam. So I knew early on, though, that I just wasn't going to make it as any kind of pro. I just didn't have that kind of skill set or skill level or the access to ride that often. I wrote a lot, but just not to the level where it was going to take me anywhere. So I think I was very fortunate that my mom really encouraged my drawing and design work and everything. So I went off to UMass Amherst for design, and with the thought of, I gotta do this and get my ass to California somewhere if I'm ever gonna break into this industry. So yeah. I was designing some T-shirts. I started a little T-shirt business in college, and I would sell I would hand screen my tees myself and everything, and sell them in the dorms, because back then they had the big high-rise dorms. I would just go door to door and knock on the doors, sell the tees, and super cool. So anyways, long story short, as soon as I was done with school, I literally packed everything I owned in my hockey bag, put it in a car, and drove to Huntington Beach. That was about 1991. And I've been here ever since.
Wow.
So I never went back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and I just was fortunate enough where I just, I had, just like everybody else, I was juggling 3 or 4 jobs part-time, and started an apparel company in the garage. Because back then, I don't know, I'm dating myself, but in the early 90s, that's when like counterculture and all these cool upstart surf companies were being built out of garages in Huntington Beach. And we were all starting to transfer from from BMX to mountain biking, but we didn't want to wear spandex because back then, like a lot of people were in, spandex garb on BMX, and I lived like literally an eighth of a mile from Sheep Hills, so we're all riding down in Sheep and everything. So I started wearing, we're all just wearing our surf trunks mountain biking. So I took a pair of Lycra shorts and my surf trunks down to the local seamstress and had her sew them together and rode with them. And I was like, oh man, this kind of works. And then a couple of my buddies wanted them. And so I had some made for them. And then it just grew into a real apparel company. So I started a company named Deviate, which we manufactured BMX and mountain bike clothing and eventually moto clothing.
Yeah.
And I ran that with a partner of mine. It was just 2 of us owned and operated the thing. And we had sales reps. We moved into a warehouse.
Wow.
Funny story is we were literally next door to LBZ's. This was an LBZ. It was on top of the world. And Mike Richards was just killing it. And so, that was.
So you started this thing as just an idea in your garage. And I mean, it got all the way to the point that you had a staff and you had a warehouse. That's awesome.
Yeah. Fully distributed. We had distributors in Europe, and, we're in all the bike shops, and pricepoint.com was one of the first mail order companies, and they were right out of Gardena, California. So we got in with them. And so we were selling our stuff through them. And, Don Zabo, Double O Zabo, ran the screen printing service right next to me. So like I said, back then it was just a group of us, just all going for it.
Yeah.
And,
that's awesome. I got to say, I'm jealous that so I'm a lifelong BMX guy still. I still race BMX. I just bought a new house in December and built trails in my backyard. My wife was not pumped on that. I rented a skid steer. And so I'm a big BMX guy. So when you say, you live right next to Sheep Hills, that's like, I've never been there, but like I literally know what the lines look like because I've watched so many videos from Corey Nastasio and all. So that's pretty rad. You're in like the dreamland for an East Coaster like me, being right in the heart of moto and BMX. That's awesome. So you were pretty heavily influenced with BMX, but obviously you were a fan of moto. Like, what kind of took you down the path of going into moto as opposed to cycling? Because you said you started to get into mountain biking as well.
Yeah. So when I moved into my neighborhood, since we're so close to Sheep Hills, Brian Foster lived in my track.
Wow, that's cool.
Chris Moeller owns S&M Bikes, lives in my track. Little D, Donnie Elmer, lives across the street. So it was this community, and we all just did everything together, and we started. Everybody that rode BMX and Sheep rode moto too. You know what I mean? Like that was. I was thinking Scott Toth, who ran the Huffy BMX the team at the time with Todd Lyons and Corey and all the guys. He lived on the block next to me, so we would take the Huffy rig to Lake Elsinore, to the Elsinore track, and ride. So we really, when we were running the Deviate as more of a cycling apparel company, we all aspired to be in moto somehow, because that was the stepping stone, where it's almost the opposite now, where cycling, bicycle apparel is now beating moto apparel. But back then it was the opposite way. You wanted to get from bike to moto somehow, right? Like that was the kind of coming up point.
Right.
So the more we all motoed together, the more it influenced the apparel that we were making. So we started making, some moto apparel, not a ton, but we started dabbling in it. And, we had all the guys that crossed over from BMX into moto wearing it. And it started to take off pretty well, to the point where we actually sold it. We sold the business in 2000 to a venture capital group. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize you had that much of a background in cycling. I used to run the only BMX track in West Virginia. USA BMX is a client of ours now. I'm working with them on a project that they're doing, so I'm still very involved. It's funny because everybody, like, I'm the biggest moto fan, but I never raced moto. The only dirt bike race I've ever done was Rob Bidas did the Master of the Pit last winter, and I raced a pit bike against like Davey Coombs and Rob Fox and all these guys. I've always raced and competed in BMX, and now I run an e-bike race team in the GNCC series. So it's but it's like I don't know. My parents didn't want me to race, but I always could kind of like worship like the Stewarts and the Carmichaels and like try to be like them on my BMX bike because I didn't race moto. So yeah, when I meet somebody like you that you kind of have a massive root in both sides, that's cool. So you sold the company.
Yep. What
was next? Like, is that when you really kind of jumped on board with somebody in the moto space, or what was the next step?
Kind of, once we sold the business, it kind of elevated my status in the industry. I hate to say it that way, but it's just like anything else. All of a sudden it was, it's coming up a bit. And I was take a little bit of time off, just kind of reset myself and just surfing a lot and riding. And I was actually with Simon Cudby, who's been a lifelong friend of mine. And we were riding at Elsinore, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, MSR is looking for somebody to really change the brand image, and I think you'd be the perfect person for that." And I was like, oh man, MSR. At this point, this was MSR of, 2004. It was not pretty, and I love the brand, but it wasn't so good. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's for me. And I had gotten involved with, I don't know if you remember, but I had gotten involved with Alloy MX.
Okay. Yep.
And I helped open the US office here, and I had a little piece of that business and did all the marketing for them to get that off the ground. So here I was working with one of what was the coolest brands that had just, come out. And then MSR was more of I hate to say, but just a kind of aging out brand, right? It was kind of had lost its identity. And anyways, long story short, I had a meeting with Malcolm Smith, who's obviously everybody's idol that's watched on any Sunday. And I couldn't believe that I was having lunch with him, and it was just the two of us sitting there having lunch. And he's like, "Hey, I've heard of you and I've heard a lot of great things about you." And I couldn't believe like that the way he was just so nice to me. And it was just really comforting. And I said, "Malcolm, I'd love to do this, and Tucker Rocky had owned the brand at this point. They had bought the brand. But Malcolm was still the namesake, and he wasn't there every day, but he had a lot of say in the brand at this point still. And it was important to Tucker Rocky that he bought into whoever they brought on to run the brand. So I kind of just pitched them and said, I'd like to take it in a different direction. I want to bring it back to Supercross, and, I get some ideas for some new logos. And I'm thinking he's going to be like, who the hell does this kid think he is, and get out of here. And he really just looked at me and he put his hand out and shook my hand and was like, "Let's do this." And I'm like, what? So, next thing I know, Tucker Rocky guys flew in from Dallas. They met with me, and I kind of had already done up the logos that I was thinking and what where I'd like to take the brand look. And I said, if you guys are willing to do this, then I'm willing to take a shot at this. And the crazy thing was, the consensus was like they didn't have much time to revive the brand. I think they kind of gave me, without coming out and just saying it, like he basically got like 2 years to turn this thing around. You know what I mean? Like, so there was a time that the clock was ticking. Yeah. Because they also owned Answer and Pro Taper. And the three brands were run out of a small Corona office, like a remote office, instead of out of Dallas. So we jumped in. I called Nick Way right away and talk about the funny BMX tie-in is when I called him, he was at the BMX track in Michigan. He was living in DeWitt back then. And I had sent him some of the pants. And back then the MSR pants had these zippers at the bottoms, like to put them, make sure you could get them over your legs and everything. And it was just horrible. And Nick was like, "Are you serious? You send me pants with zippers in them? I can't ride in this stuff."
That's awesome.
And I'm like, "Come on, buddy, me and you can do like great things with this brand. Like, I want you to be the face of it, like we've got, it's me, you, and Malcolm basically. Like, how cool could this be?" And I'm like, we'll take the zippers out and we'll sew out the, and we'll stitch over them. Don't worry about the damn zippers. So after some back and forth, we signed Nick up to the brand, and we're off and running and really started going for it with it.
Yeah. Man, that's all. So I didn't. Again, I knew who you were, but I didn't know a ton about you. So I mean, you really had massive involvement in taking that brand to the next level. So what did the next few years look like? I mean, how quickly did things take off once Nick got on board, and what did that trajectory look like?
I'll tell you, some of the funnest and best times in my life were those next 3-4 years, because Nick was heavily involved. I was really into it because I really had my mindset to make that brand everything it could be. I had surrounded myself with some great people. I hired Randy Valade, was one of the first guys I brought on to help me with athlete support and all that stuff. He was fresh off his racing career. And Randy and Nick grew up together, racing together. So the three of us were really tight. You know what I mean? So there was already that camaraderie, and I spent a couple of years on the road going to all the races and really, boots on the ground type stuff. That's, it's tough to do these days after 20 years. But back then we were all in. You know what I mean? Everybody was all in, and we had the support of Tucker Rocky, which at the time was $500-600 million distributor, so the financing was there, and all the logistics were there. They took care of all the logistics. I was so used to doing everything myself, from accounting to purchase orders, everything, where Tucker Rocky had all the infrastructure in place. We just we did design, athlete development, athlete signing, with the more fun, curated stuff like that. Anything consumer facing, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, after about a year, Tucker Rocky had a lot of confidence in me, and they really just gave me enough rope to hang myself. So I was just going for it, and it was great. Within I think the third year, the brand was profitable again, and the reps were stoked. Tucker Rocky had like 150 reps, and they were selling it like crazy. And Nick was doing great, and he's like the people's champ at that point. And going and seeing dealers with me, and then I was like, man, this is such an American brand. We need to bring on like another guy that fits the mold. And K-Dub was available. He's coming available. Met with K-Dub, and he was like, man, I'm in, dude. Let's do this. And awesome. Then it was just,
yeah. Then you're off.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Then we're off, and it was game on. At that point, like, there was no stopping us.
Yeah. What eventually led you to the next step? Clearly, you're at Troy Lee now. Did you get an offer to do something else? Were you just kind of like, you know what, I've done what I need to do here, and it's time for something new? After all the stuff you guys did, what was the next thing that kind of was your next step in the journey in the sport?
Well, I stayed with Tucker. So MSR went so well. Tucker eventually asked if I would become the director of all off-road brands for Tucker Rocky. So I took over Answer and Pro Taper. So then I found myself director of, not only MSR, but the sister brand Answer and the handlebar company, Pro Taper. And that's when I brought Castellou on. Mm-hmm. I had Pilo there for a bit, Pat Lopez. So we looked at Answer the same way we looked at MSR, like, okay, we're going to reboot this, and we needed somebody big, and it needed to make a big splash. So I went after Stewart, and that's when we signed Stewart to the Answer brand. And for me that was a huge accomplishment, because he had been with Fox his whole life. People said he was never leaving.
Right.
I remember actually being at my hometown track, Southwick, Massachusetts, and being in the motorhome with him, and that's where I signed the letter of intent. He signed the letter of intent at Southwick, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's really going to change this."
Do you think it's crazy? Because when anybody brings James up and you look back, like, it's such a big deal. It's honestly, it's similar to like J-Law. Like, I don't think we realized at the time how we were still going to be talking about them for years to come. I would say more so with Stu, we did, but like even now, it's like you tell that story, and it's got to be one of those things where you're like, man, that really was a massive deal that he, moved from Fox to you guys. Like, what was that like in the moment? Like, to you, was it just like you're in the grind, you're in the bubble, like you don't really think of how big of a deal it was, or did you know,
it was
like, man, this is history?
Yeah, it was made clear to me by Tucker Rocky that this was going to be on my shoulders because it was such a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, if we do this, this could go, if this starts going south, you're going down with the ship. They made that clear.
Sure.
But Tim Pritchard was the VP of Tucker Rocky at the point, and he was one of my mentors, and he had my back, and he gave me the confidence to get it done. And, I had a Lloyd's of London insurance contract on, I did a lot of footwork for that deal. Took a long time to piece together. And then when it happened, like I said, I remember walking out of that motorhome and being like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I didn't think, you know what I mean? So now I've got Nick, Kevin, and Stu, you know what I mean? I was like, what a powerful lineup of athletes,
Yeah. That's like, I bet you didn't sleep much that night. Just the excitement from that
I didn't sleep much that night, but I'll tell you what, we went into Anaheim 1 after, now we've got Stu and K-Dub and Nick out on the track, and Anaheim 1, I'm all excited. All of Tucker Rocky's executive flew in, and they're all watching, the president, vice president, CEO. And I don't know if you remember, but Stewart and Wyndham, they came together and took each other out.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God.
I do remember.
I had a mental breakdown. Like, I had to go. I just went out to the pits and sat in my truck and was like, I'm not even going to tell you the combined salaries that just went down on the ground. And, you know what I mean? And it wasn't what I was hoping for that night. But
I forgot they both were wearing the same thing. It was
crazy. Yeah, and Kev was on MSR, and Stu's on Answer, and so both brands laying in the corner, on the ground. And anyways, it worked itself out. I mean, it was just one of those things where sometimes expectations are too high.
Yeah, no doubt. So I guess I want to talk to you about Troy Lee. So I guess how did that opportunity come about for you to make that transition to go over to work with Troy? And you're the global marketing director now. Is that where you kind of stepped in, or what did that opportunity initially look like for you?
So after a decade or so at Tucker, things just, there was change in management, change in atmosphere there and stuff. So it was just time to move on and look for the next thing. So once again, I found myself taking a little bit of a breather and, surfing and riding again, enjoying myself, remembering what life was like. And I started a little consulting company just to keep busy. And I was working with a few people in the industry, helping them. And I talked to Troy Lee. They were getting ready to launch their SE4 helmet. So this was 7 years ago. And they asked if I would put together a go-to-market plan for it. Just as a consultant, because I wasn't even ready to I don't think I was mentally ready to go back to work yet with a high level position or anything. And so I was like, yeah, that actually sounds really cool. Like, I can bring this thing to life for you in the background, Right. So I would go to the office, by the office a couple times a week, and I was working hand in hand with Bill Keefe, who was the general manager at the time, Troy's brother-in-law, and Troy and the crew there. And then, about a month into it, next thing you know, they're asking if I can spend a day at the office, a full day. And then it was 2 days. Then next thing you know, they have a desk for me in the marketing department. And
wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what's going on here? But I will say I was mesmerized. It had been Tucker had gotten so corporate, and Troy Lee, as you know, after interviewing Troy, being at Troy Lee, Troy's there every day. He's painting, he's drawing, he's a true artist. He talks like an artist. Crazy shit goes on there. So this was so different from what I was used to at the end of my Tucker days that I was just loving it. I was like, oh my God, this is great. Like, this is fun. It's back to being fun again. MSR in the, in 2004 or whatever. It was I had that feeling again, running through my blood. And so we were just in a meeting one day with all the TLD marketing designers, and it was me, Troy, Bill, and the designers, and I was going over the go-to-market plan for the last time for the helmets. And the boys were just like, one of them raised their hand, and Troy's like, "What's up, Sean?" And he's like, "Can we just hire Dave at this point? Like, can we just bring him on?" And like, my heart melted for a minute. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, oh man, these are the best designers I've worked with. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are so good. And they just looked at me and they're like, "Let's run upstairs and get this done." I'm like, whoa. Like,
there's something about being like, I always refer to, like, there's two types of businesses. There's the small speedboat that can make these really quick changes and adapt and adjust and make decisions quickly. And then there's like the big cruise ship that it takes forever. And I've seen it happen to where, whether a client or somebody leaves a client and goes to another business that is that big cruise ship, and it's just, there's something about it that you just miss from being small and nimble. And I kind of, is that kind of what you were getting? Like, it's that feeling of like getting in and getting your hands dirty again and being able to make adjustments and make decisions quickly. There's just something magical about that. Is that a feeling you got when you went to Troy Lee, that you felt maybe like it was missing at the end of over at Tucker?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You just nailed it. Like, we were able to pivot so quick, and we have the paint shop in there. So like, when I was doing the media day, I ran the helmets into the paint shop, and we hand painted, all the editors' names on them and pinstripe them. And that's the kind of stuff, just having more of a design background. That's the kind of stuff that gets me excited and wants to work harder, and like I said, just Troy being there, and, we're all just running around and high-fiving. And it was good. It was a great change of pace, and I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of the Troy Lee building, but it's an old Ganal lumber building that Troy bought. And there's like a complete, really cool museum, retail store up front with just stuff, 40 years worth of memorabilia, full-blown paint shop with pinstripers, airbrushes, and everything right there. And then the marketing department is in the building behind it, which we call it, it's coined the shed, because it was really the Ganal lumber shed that we've converted into like a great like work atmosphere place, which awesome. Has now become trendy because it's a barn. You know what I mean? And now barns are trending. When we first had it, it
wasn't cool when we first.
It wasn't cool. Now it's people come there, and that's where we filmed the Whiskey Throttle show and stuff. So
okay, I got you.
You can kind of get the atmosphere in there. So
that is that's a place that I haven't made it, and that's on my list next time I'm in California. Kind of making my rounds, I'll have to coordinate with you, because I've seen photos and I know it's iconic, and it's something that, as an East Coast moto enthusiast that works in the industry, and I've never been there, it's borderline unacceptable. So yeah, that's cool.
Well, you'll be my guest when you come into town. I'll give you the rounds. Yeah. We'll make it fun.
So. Troy, you got, man, the brand is so interesting to me, because it started with art in mind, and then it really grew, and then it went from just helmets to gear, and the gear is some of the best in the world, and you guys have the team, and now the team has stepped up, and you've got one of the marquee riders on that team now, and you were there through that, pretty much that entire transition, at least as far as like the team becoming a thing, and then it becoming more of a legitimate team, and now you're one of the top, if not the top team. So what was that like? I mean, that's got to be an exciting ride to be on as well.
Yeah, that was really crazy. So I've been there since, when I got there, we were already KTM, but just a 250 team. And we had the Orange Brigade, where, TK would bring up the kids through Orange Brigade with Nate Dogg, and then they'd, come to our team. There was already a pathway, right? So we knew who was coming up the channel. And then I remember, like it was yesterday, like the pandemic was just hitting, and John Hines, of the president of KTM, and Roger DeCoster had contacted Troy about Gas. And this is when nobody knew like what Gas was outside. It was a Spanish brand that had trials bikes, you know what I mean? And they were like, "Hey, we want to talk to you about this opportunity." And like I said, we were on pretty much COVID lockdown. We weren't really going to the office. This was during like the initial scare, and we all me, Maki, who's a lead designer for Troy for 25 plus years. So I've kind of made like some marketing mock-ups, and Maki did like the bike and gear, sportswear and the look, and alongside Troy, and we met with them, and I was ecstatic about the idea, because I'm like, this is a fresh start, you know what I mean? And they kept mentioning the word fun, and Heinz actually said, like, Casella, I know you're kind of like, you and Troy want like the party in the pits, like that's your vibe at the truck, and KTM is a little bit more corporate. Gas would allow you to have more of that fun vibe, like we're still going to take racing seriously, but we can get that fun injection back in that Troy Lee's all about. So I was amped. TK had some apprehensions because, what was Gas going to be? Was it going to be a red KTM? Was it going to get the funding? Was it going to get the attention? You know what I mean? So I think there was two camps, there was the marketing camp where I was super excited I was thinking back to, once again, MSR and stuff, and creating something bringing something back to life. Right. Yeah. With Troy's vision. And TK was thinking, wow, we really still need the support and that. And then they said, we put a 450 athlete on this. And then Troy was like, okay, that's his dream. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll tell you what, Luke, this thing just spiraled like within a month. This whole thing was it was every day, all day, 12 hours a day, like building out the look, talking to 450 guys, you know what I mean, that were available or coming available. And it was chaos. And I couldn't be prouder of what everybody pulled off. And, TK's done a great job, bonding with Barsha and managing him, and the rest, PB's been with us a long time. He's awesome. And Moseman's been a wonderful surprise. Like, that kid is awesome. So yeah, that whole gas thing has really rejuvenated our spirit, I think, because just like anything else, something fresh and new, and having Barsha on the podium and winning Houston 1 was, after we did the spoof,
I was going to say the spoof too. Like it just fits everything as far as, you guys, and you had the reputation of being the fun brand. And you guys come out of the gates with that. And then, man, I feel like Barsha opened up this year to where everybody's known him and he's got the cool style. But honestly, from a fan perspective, I felt like over the last few years, he almost became robotic and stale, which is what happens to a lot of the 450 guys. And then as soon as he gets on your team, it didn't happen immediately, but like by mid Supercross and then, well, really by outdoors, like now he's got he's got BAM TV, and like it is a different person than I thought Barsha was. And it's him being himself. And I think hearing you say this all now, like it's almost like he's gotten permission to be himself where maybe he wasn't able to do it before. And that fits perfectly with what the TLD and the Gas brand is looking for. Was that, I don't want to say intentional, but was that like you guys encouraging him, hey, open up, be yourself, like show people who you really are?
Yeah. Like him and Troy are super tight. So there was a mutual respect from day one, which was great. And I'll never forget the first time that Barsha came into the marketing department. We had the photo studio all set up, and I had talked to Sean Thomas, our creative director, and I was like, what's the chance of us bringing back the Bam Bam? Like, look, you know what I mean? Like, what can we do? We got to image him, right? Like, we got to bring back that awesome image and whole thing. So Sean ran to the sporting goods store and got that red aluminum bat, and we printed out a Bam Bam decal real quick and put it on it. So then we didn't even tell JB. So he's, we're taking pictures of him and everything, and he's posing and stuff. And then I kind of reach over and I pull the bat out from behind the table, and I'm like, hey, you don't need to do this if you don't want to. But me and Sean were kind of thinking, Bam Bam bat thing. And he just looked at me and he's like, throw me the damn bat, dude. And I threw it to him. He caught it, and he just, did that pose that we used.
Awesome.
You know what I mean?
That photo is one of the most badass photos with an announcement that I've seen, just because it's like, okay, he's back. And like he's on this new brand, and like, okay, that's like I love that type of a rider. Like, and he went away. Like, it was weird. Like, he became like he just was very closed off for the last few years. And I think everybody still liked him. It's just he wasn't the same. He wasn't Bam Bam. And as soon as he gets on with you guys, it changes. And it all makes sense now here, and you kind of walk us through it.
Yeah, as soon as that happened, I just looked at Sean and I'm like, we've got our guy. Like, this is going to be awesome. And, and then we went from that, we went and did the A1 spoof. And then even just something recent, we did a gear shoot about a month ago with all the guys, Sealy and PB and Moseman and Ping. And JB was just out there play ride and having like inspiring all the other guys to play ride and have fun. And I just talked to him afterwards and I'm like, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that kind of spirit because I mean, we all know they have to show up for these photo shoots, right? And sometimes it can be robotic. And, when you're somebody of JB's caliber and you've done that many photo shoots for that long,
yeah,
let's say they're not so fun sometimes, right?
Right.
But man, he was like, all the boys were just having a blast and the whole day was great. And I'm just like, he's just a great dude, man. And just
that's cool.
It's the brand. Like you said, we got really lucky with this partnership. And I think for both sides, I think it's helped JB a lot and it's certainly helped TLD a lot, and I love watching him and Troy. Troy gets so excited watching him. So
I remember when we had him on, when we had Troy on, when we started talking about the team and Justin, and his demeanor changed. Like it was like I was talking to a kid. Like he was he was so excited, and that was cool. And I think it was Moto Spy, or the Supercross show that Red Bull does. They showed you guys winning Houston 1, and it was like I've never actually there's footage of Troy like excited, like he was like high-fiving and hugging Justin, and it was cool to see that. And you guys through and through the entire brand, like from the gear to the team to the riders, like it's the same thing as a company with really good culture, and you guys leverage that culture to have fun, but also like your content is so good because of it that in turn it helps promote not only the team but also the TLD brand itself. Like it's really cool to see what you guys have done just in the last year. I'm excited to see what happens moving forward with it as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We try really hard like that to organically show what we are and who we are. And I get a lot of that, like, cause I'm over on the bike division too, the bicycle mountain bike division. And I have Stickman that is our global bike brand manager, director, who's iconic in the industry, in the bike industry. He's been there, done that, super good dude. And I just watch, what he's been able to accomplish with, Semenuk and Brendog and Cam Zink and all the camaraderie there and all the fun stuff. And, I got back into going to events, going to Sea Otter and all these things. And I was like, we need to get Moto back to this. This is missing on the Moto side. It's gotten so serious. There's no, like, you know what I mean? So I was so inspired being part of the bike division, you know, and seeing everything going on there. I've done, I've tried really hard to bring that over back into the Moto division and be like, let's lighten up a bit again. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and it makes sense because if you like, your vibe is very similar. If you've ever been to like Snowshoe when they have the World Cup there, or even just following them online, like the vibe in the pits, like the riders are just pumped to be there. Yeah, they take it serious, but they're having fun. Like it's a party and a celebration in almost every race.
Yeah,
and that makes sense because that's very similar to what I have seen in a transition in your guys' pits just in the last year or so. Like it's similar to that. So, and I think that's something that the sports are so similar, but they're so completely different as far as the personalities and the attitudes, and the money's much, much bigger in Moto. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But, I mean, we're talking about riding on two wheels for a living. Like it's supposed to be fun. And I feel like you guys try to embody that. And it's cool, like as a global marketing director, like I didn't expect for you to be as involved on all the different facets of the business as you are. Like you're super involved on the race team. I didn't expect that. But it's part of the marketing of the brand, so it makes sense.
Yeah, our number one marketing vessel on the Moto side, that's our number one spend. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. So there is a lot of concentration there and a lot of, a lot of involvement, and it's Troy's that's Troy's number one baby. Like, like we talk a lot about the team.
Yeah. It's, I talk. People probably get sick of hearing it on the show the same way they get sick of hearing Mathis talk about e-bikes on his show. But I'm a lifelong cyclist, and GNCC brought the whole e-biking thing into the sport. And as a BMX guy, like I never really mountain biked that much, and then e-biking got me into it. And now I created this team that I take very, very serious. Like, all things considered, compared to a moto team, it's cheap, but I dump a ton of my time, a ton of my money into it, and that is my baby. Aside from the business, I can only imagine owning a Supercross and Motocross team. Like, and it's been cool to see his passion. We almost lost Barsha from the sport a few years ago. Now we're talking about him being like one of the main guys and the most lively people in the sport. And, Troy, like, it's revitalized him, I guess, at some capacity. Like, he just looks like he's having so much fun with this. And the way you talk about everything, it's like, it genuinely looks like you really enjoy your job, and you have as much fun with it as one might think you would have.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate, Luke, for sure. Like, sometimes I got to pinch myself. I'll be the first to say I can get extremely frustrated, and, it can be tough, just being in the weeds a lot, still Troy Lee overall is still a small brand, so we're all, doesn't really matter what your title is on certain days. You're still in it, right? Setting up 10x10s, and
right.
We're off to the Glen Helen Vet National this weekend, so I'll be out there with the guys setting up and rooting everybody on. Troy's going to race on Sunday out there. So
that's cool.
That'll be a lot of fun. But it's just, I think if you put your mind to it, I think it's proof that you can make it happen. A lot of sacrifice. I won't say I ate PB&Js for about 3 years straight. I had no money. Like I said, I was working 3 part-time jobs. But looking back, man, that's what made me and shaped me, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
No doubt. Well, man, this has been cool. I can't wait to the time that I get out there and actually get to meet you in person and sit down and have a conversation, because your interests are my interests. You've done some really cool things, and what gets you excited is the same thing that gets me excited. I think people are going to really enjoy this episode. It's you're one of the stories in the sport that I really wanted to tell and share, because you have a really cool path to where you're at now, and the position you're in now. Like, you're doing some of the coolest stuff in our sport currently, and I appreciate that. Man, it's been fun. I really appreciate your time and for you coming on today, and I look forward to seeing you maybe at Anaheim 1. That's the goal, is to get out to that.
Let's make that the goal, Luke. I'm gonna hold you to that.
Yeah,
beers were on me. All right.
Sounds good, man. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, Luke. Thanks,
awesome.
Dude.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impact Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpact.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.